Hi, I'm Angela Walters from Quilting is My Therapy, and welcome to the Fillers Free Motion Challenge Quilting Along. Throughout this free video series, I'm going to show you how to quilt some of my favorite filler quilting designs. I'll teach you design variations, and I'll demonstrate how to quilt them on a sewing machine and a long arm. When we're done, you'll feel more confident about your machine quilting skills, and you'll have a sampler quilt of all your new favorite designs as well. And it's not too late to quilt along with me on the exclusive panel I designed just for this video series. To find out more about this and the other exclusive products I put together, just check the link in the description box below. In this video, we're going to be talking about circle-shaped fillers, including pebbles, bubbles, ovals, and more. First up, we're going to talk about the Pebbles quilting design. The Pebbles design is one of those classic machine quilting designs that looks good on any quilt, and it adds the perfect amount of texture without movement. That means it's perfect for highlighting main elements of your quilt. Use them around blocks to make them pop, or use them around other quilting designs to really show them off. Well, let's get to quilting those pebbles. Quilting pebbles can be scary to some newer quilters, but it doesn't have to be. Let me break it down and show you how to quilt it. First, I'm going to start by quilting a circle about the size of a penny. Then I'm going to quilt the next circle so that it goes the opposite direction. So for instance, if I quilted the first circle clockwise, I'm going to quilt the second circle counterclockwise. So this one went clockwise and that one's going counterclockwise. It's that change of direction that really helps hook those pebbles together and fill in the area as much as possible. Then I'm going to add the next pebbles alternating directions just like I've already done. But there's one more small thing to think about: traveling. Traveling is quilting along that previously quilted line, and we're going to use traveling to maneuver our way around the area. I'm not necessarily traveling around the pebbles to give it a certain kind of look. Instead, I'm traveling around it to get where I need to go next. Traveling is really important because if I didn't incorporate traveling every once in a while, I would end up with circles that all go in a row. And that's fine, but I want it to go in all different directions to give us that beautiful all-over texture. Traveling is also going to help me maneuver in and around an area. If I get stuck, I can simply travel along a previously quilted line and get to a new area. But if you find that you're struggling with pebbles or they don't look quite how you want them to look, here are a few tips to make it a little bit easier. First of all, quilt them a little bit bigger. I've noticed in some of my classes that some quilters tend to quilt them really small right off the bat. And that can be tricky because it doesn't give your brain time to catch up to what your hands are doing. Think about quilting them about the size of a penny. Basically, you want a little bit of time to think through the next step. Another tip that you might find helpful is you may need to quilt a little faster. In general, when I'm traveling and teaching, I notice that a lot of newer quilters want to try quilting their pebbles slowly. And I mean, it kind of does make sense, right? If I just hold the fabric tighter and I quilt slower and I stop breathing, surely my pebbles will be round, right? Well, not so much. With this design, we really want to use the momentum to help us get that nice, smooth line. So if you find that you have time to critique the job you're doing while you're doing that, it's too slow. So if I'm thinking, oh, it's not looking round, it's not looking round, it's not looking round, too slow. Now, I don't want you to go so quickly that you're out of control. So play around with that and find the speed where you can hit that sweet spot. When it comes to these pebbles, I really want to focus on a smooth line, not a perfect circle. So as long as the line is smooth, it's going to look great. Another thing that will help you with your pebbles is try not to stress about keeping your traveling lines perfectly on those previously quilted circles. I mean, that's kind of the funniest joke of the whole lesson. It's hard enough to quilt a circle once without doing it right over again the second time. When you finish quilting your pebbles and you stand back and you look at your quilted area, what's really going to stand out is that pop of unquilted area right in the center of the circle. Another thing to remember is at any point you can pause, you can stop and think through your next steps. I don't know what it is about me, but when I'm learning a new design, I just want to keep on quilting, feeling like I can't stop. Stop, take a moment to think through where you want to add your next pebble, consider how you're going to get there, and then do it. It's a lot easier to change your mind than it is to rip out any quilting that you don't like. Now when it comes to pebbles, one of the things to remember is that we're quilting circles. And when we put a bunch of circles together, we're going to have unquilted areas in between them, little gaps. But I'm going to try as hard as I can to keep those gaps smaller than the pebbles themselves. So if I find any gaps in there that are bigger than the pebble, I'll just use the traveling to get where that is. add some more pebbles, and continue on. When I'm finished, I just want to make sure that whole area is filled in as much as possible. Now, if you've been practicing and you're still struggling with the pebbles and you're thinking like, oh, I just cannot get it, there is an easier option for you. Instead of quilting a bunch of circles so that they fit together, let's start off by quilting a meandering line that goes in all different directions. Then at a certain point, when I'm feeling brave, I can try quilting a circle and then going right back into my meandering line. This is going to help me get the practice of quilting those circles and maneuvering my way around the area without the additional pressure of worrying about which direction to go or incorporating traveling. And then as you're quilting your meandering line, as you feel led, go ahead and add some more circles, filling in that area. And who knows, as you quilt along, you might feel brave enough to add a figure 8 or even multiple circles. Using that meandering line to transition the pebbles will allow you to build up to it and is a lot easier than jumping right into that design that might be a little tricky. Now that we've seen what it looks like to quilt pebbles on the sewing machine, let's look and see how it differs when quilting them on a long arm. When I'm quilting pebbles on a long arm, the design is still going to go together the same way. I'm still quilting my circles, I'm still changing directions, I'm still using traveling to maneuver my way around an area. When quilting on a long arm, it can be really difficult to control the momentum of the machine. So you might find that it's a little out of control for you as you're trying to quilt those nice round pebbles. You have most control of your quilting when your hands are right in front of you. Try not to quilt pebbles so that your arms are really far away from your body or really, really close to your body. You want to have them in that sweet spot where you have the most control. But just like quilting pebbles on a sewing machine, it takes a little bit of practice to get the hang of it. So keep at it, and soon you'll be pebbling like a professional. Now that we've seen how to quilt those pebble designs, let's talk about where to use them on your quilts. Because I believe it's one thing to know how to quilt a design, it's a totally different thing to know when and where to use them on your quilts. First up, this design is classic, so it can be used on any kind of quilt, from ultra traditional to uber modern. But I will point out that I love to use this design in tonal or solid fabrics. The fact that it takes a little bit longer to quilt means that if I'm going to take the time to do it, I kind of want to see it when I'm finished. So if I'm working on a quilt with a lot of busier fabrics or I can't see the quilting, I'm probably going to skip over this to a different option. I don't want to take all the effort to quilt those pebbles if you're not even going to be able to see them when I'm finished. Try using them in backgrounds of blocks, especially blocks that you've pieced well and you want to show off, or even around other quilting designs or other elements that you really want to highlight. You can use them around a quilting design, such as a feather or a motif, or you can even sprinkle them in with other quilting designs just to add a little pop of texture here and there. And doing it this way is a great way to practice the pebbles without committing to using them over a whole area. But what I probably love the most about pebbles is that you can build off that basic shape and create a lot of different variations, which is going to give you even more versatility when it comes to your quilts. So let's see some different ways that you can quilt the pebbles to create a bunch of different variations. And hey, before we get started, do not get overwhelmed. I have a free downloadable PDF with quilting diagrams and tips for all the variations, including the pebbles, so you can download that, print it out, and have it as a resource for you when you start quilting. If you need a little bit more help, a little bit more assistance, I also have an expanded PDF with even more diagrams and even more tips. You can find the information about both of those in the description box below. The next circle shape filler design we're going to learn is bubbles. Changing up the size of your pebbles is a great way to give your quilting a different texture, and as a bonus, it's quicker to quilt. I'm going to start by quilting some bigger circles and some smaller circles, and continue quilting them, changing up the size, filling in the area. Here's a couple things to consider though. I want to make sure that there's enough difference in size of my pebbles that it looks intentional. I don't want to quilt them so similar in size with just a little bit of difference, because then it might look like I'm trying to quilt them the same size, but not being successful at it. Another thing that will help you with this variation is to quilt the bigger circles first, and then fill in around with the smaller ones. I mean, it kind of makes sense when I say it out loud, right? It's really hard to fit big circles in little areas. But beyond that, everything that we've already learned is the same. We're still going to travel around the circles to get where we need to add the next one. We're still going to try to fill in the area as much as possible, and we're still going to have a beautiful texture design when we're finished. And there's really nothing different about quilting this design on a sewing machine or a long arm. Now, if you struggle with the traveling, you might find that quilting around those bigger circles can be a little bit more difficult, since you'll have to travel a little bit further. But just take your time, work through it, and know that when you're done, you're gonna have these beautiful bubbles on your quilts. This design is perfect for novelty quilts, kids quilts, landscape quilts, or quilts that you just need to get finished because it quilts a lot faster than your classic pebbles. Now in this variation, I am switching up the size as I quilt it, but you can be a little bit more intentional with that. You can start out with pebbles that are smaller that gradually get bigger, or you can intersperse them. Really, your imagination is the limit. Another way you can take that classic circle shape and switch up the design is to overlap them. Up to this point, I've been saying quilt them close together, fill in the area, but we're trying not to run them over each other. Well, now we're gonna forget that. Overlapping pebbles are a lot of fun to quilt, and they can look like raindrops on the ground. It can look like wine rings. It can look like bubbles too. Start with your circles a little bit bigger. And then I like to quilt a few and then overlap one. So I'll quilt a couple of pebbles regularly, just like we've seen. And then when I'm ready to add another one, instead of quilting it so that it's right next to the previous one, I'm going to intentionally overlap that previously quilted circle and then continue on. Now here's the trick with this. I want it to look intentional. So I'm not going to overlap it just a little bit. I'm going to be very intentional that the overlapping amount is pretty drastic, like by a quarter inch or so. The trick to making this variation look great is not to worry about overlapping every single pebble. It can look a little messy, and we don't want that effect. I just want it to randomly overlap and give it a little bit of that different texture. I love to use this again on kids quilts, novelty quilts, landscape quilts, or any area where I want to draw attention. Now another variation that you can create the pebbles is to add some echoing. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that echoing is your best quilting friend. And now we're going to use echoing just to add a little pop of texture to our pebbles. I'm going to start quilting my pebbles normally by quilting my bigger circle, and then adding another one just on the inside, echoing that shape. Now one thing I do that's a little different is I keep going the same direction. So if my outer pebble is quilted clockwise, I'm going to quilt my littler pebble clockwise inside of it. And that little distance between those two pebbles is just going to draw attention, give it a little bit of a different texture, and just give it a slightly different look. And just like the other variations that we've seen up to this point, make it look intentional. So I don't want to quilt those circles so that they're kind of close. I want that echo pebble inside of it to be about a quarter of an inch or more away from the outside. I want it to look intentional, even if it isn't. Now as you work through the variations, you're going to find your own style, your own way of quilting them that you like. But when I'm quilting this design, I don't echo every single pebble that I quilt. I will quilt a few pebbles and then add an echo here and there. Now you can also be more intentional about the direction of your echo. You can be more intentional about the placement, or you can just throw them in here and there to give it a beautiful look. For the last variation that we're going to see for the circle design, let's talk ovals. That's right, we're going to take that round shape and we're going to flatten it to make it an oval. This is going to be perfect for those landscape quilts or quilts, again, where you just want to add a little bit of a different pop of texture. But it's going to introduce something that we haven't seen up to this point, direction. That's right, so instead of having a circle, which is non-directional, I'm going to have an oval, which has a direction. So I'm going to have to think about how do I transfer from horizontal to vertical and vice versa. I'm going to quilt my oval just like I did my circles, quilting my first one, and then quilting the next one so that it changes direction. And by that, I mean clockwise and counterclockwise. But when I'm ready to quilt my oval in a different orientation, let's say horizontal as opposed to vertical, I'm going to get to the end of one of my ovals, and that's going to be the perfect area to transition into the next direction. Now, it's not the size of these ovals that will determine the density of your quilting, it's the spacing between the lines. So don't stress out about making your ovals all the same width or height, that doesn't matter. But try to keep the spacing between the long sides consistent, because that's going to give you that texture. As you quilt, you might notice that you have some weird little areas that you can't fit an oval into. When that happens, no worries, just throw in a couple pebbles. Remember, this is just a variation of our pebbles, so they work really well together. So throwing in those pebbles to fill in those unquilted areas and then moving on will make it so much easier. But that's just the beginning of all the variations that you can create just by switching up little bits of your design. There are so many different ways that you can use circle fillers on your quilt, and I hope this video has left you inspired and excited to give them a try. The best way to learn any new design is to actually practice. So if you're quilting along with me on the custom panel designed for this challenge, fill in the areas highlighted in yellow with the different circle designs that we've learned in this video. You can try all of them, you can just pick a couple, or you can create your own variations for an even more custom look. Then join me this Thursday at 3 p.m. Central for my live chat, where I answer your questions live and give you more design ideas for this quilt. Until then, everyone, happy quilting.